And here we are again at Numbers chapter 18, verse 27 is where I think we left off. And this your heave offering shall be reckoned unto you as though it were the corn of the threshing floor, and as the fullness of the winepress. Verse 28, Thus you also shall offer an heave offering unto the Lord of all your tithes, which you receive of the children of Israel, and you shall give thereof the Lord's heave offering to Aaron the priest. Notes, in other words, the Levites tithed the people, the priests tithed the Levites. Verse 29, Out of all your gifts you shall offer every heave offering of the Lord of all the best thereof, even the hallowed part thereof out of it. Notes, in other words, the best was always to go to the Lord, and everyone else got something a little bit less. Verse 30, Therefore you shall say unto them, when you have heaved the best thereof from it, then it shall be counted unto the Levites as the increase of the threshing floor, and as the increase of the winepress. Notes, now obviously the increase is actually talking about the tithe. Those 10% are going to add up pretty quickly. Verse 31, And you shall eat it in every place, you and your households, for it is your reward for your service in the tabernacle of the congregation. And you shall bear no sin by reason of it, when you have heard from it the best of it, or heaved from it the best of it. Notes, now they would not incur any guilty responsibility by enjoying it, and they were pleased by it. Scripture, Neither shall you pollute the holy things of the children of Israel, lest you die. Notes, the Levites must not intrude into the office of the priest, and likewise the priests are not to intrude into the office of the Levites. They both have their separate places, and they had better act upon them correctly. Chapter 19, And the Lord spoke unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord has commanded. Notes, Williams says, this chapter being found in Numbers and not in Leviticus shows inspiration. Had the sacrifice of the red heifer been invented by Jewish priests, as some affirm, they would have placed it in the book of Leviticus. Scriptures, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel that they bring you a red heifer without spot, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. Notes, now the heifer symbolizes Christ. It was spotless spotless externally, and without blemish internally. Now, without yoke actually means it was free from any bondage whatsoever. And as well, the color red refers to the fact that Christ robed himself with the red earth of manhood. Has nothing to do with the blood being shed of Christ, in other words, but we'll just go ahead and keep reading. Verse 3, And you shall give her unto Eleazar the priest, that he may bring her forth without the camp, and one shall slay her before his face. Notes, Christ was led of the Spirit to Calvary, where he offered up himself. Think about that. Verse 4, And Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood with his finger, and sprinkle of her blood directly before the tabernacle of the congregation 7 times. Notes, now the sprinkling of the blood 7 times speaks of a perfect redemption, all made possible by the death of Christ on the cross, necessitating the shedding of his blood. Read Ephesians chapter 2, verse 13 up to 18. Verse 5, And one shall burn the heifer in his sight, her skin and her flesh and her blood with her dung shall he burn. Notes, now the fire has actually a double meaning. I think I've told you this before, but I think I'll tell you again. It spoke first of all of the judgment of God upon Christ instead of upon us, to whom it rightfully belonged, and all of humanity for that matter. Number 2, the judgment poured out upon Christ, it basically signified that all sin was atoned for. Justification means that one is declared by God as not guilty, but it goes further and means that one is also innocent. It also refers to the fact that every sin is forgiven and taken away, and last of all, the justified person is placed in a position before God just as if he'd never sinned. That is justification. Romans chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. Think of it this way. The justification, just as if I'd never sinned. John Hagee said that, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. God bless you. Verse 6. And the priest shall take cedar wood, which is typical of the cross, and hyssop, which is typical of the humanity of Christ, and scarlet, which is typical of the shed blood, and cast it into the midst of the burning of the heifer. Notes. Now that's meaning that the heifer is basically a type of Christ dying on the cross of Calvary, atoning for the sin of mankind. Verse 7. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he shall come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until the evening. Notes. Even though the priests were types of Christ, still they were only types. Consequently, when dealing with sin, which this ritual did, they became unclean and had to go through a cleansing process. The difference in the type and Christ is that Christ, he dealt with sin on the cross, but dealt with it in regard to its penalty. His perfection was never marred or sullied by sin. In other words, he sanctified the cross with his perfection and above all his shed blood. Verse 8. And he who burns her, who is the heifer, shall wash his clothes in water, and bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. And a man who is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and lay them up without the camp in a clean place. Now, notes. Now, this is signifying that the price that Christ would pay on the cross would be total and would leave nothing. It would leave nothing of sin. The nothingness was symbolized by the ashes. Scripture. And it shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for a water of separation. It is a purification for sin. Notes. Now, of course, this was only a symbolism of the real purification that would come with the death of Christ on the cross. In the symbol, the ashes would be mixed with water and then applied to that which was actually polluted, if you really want me to say it correctly. Verse 10. And he who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes and be unclean until the evening, and it shall be unto the children of Israel and unto the stranger who sojourns among them for a statute forever. Notes. Now the word forever pertained basically to the entirety of the time of the law. Now when Jesus came, this was fulfilled and was no longer needed because his blood cleanses from all sin. 1 John chapter 1, verse 7. Now we're on to verse 11. Hold on just a second. Okay. He who toucheth the dead body of any man shall be unclean 7 days. Notes. Now, death in all of its form is the ultimate conclusion of sin and as a result of the fall. And we will have to pick up in Numbers chapter 19, verse 12. Thank you very much.